We're live. It's 9:30. Hopefully everyone's doing well this morning and time to rise and shine and get them projects done. So get out there, son, and get it done. How's that for your morning motivation? Get stuff done. If you take a look at the thing I want to talk about today that I'm excited about is if you take a look at the file, it's a little unique because it's not a photo. It is a graph, and that's what I live by. That's why I go to work, to see these graphs. That's why I do what I do. That's what it's all about, the graphs for me. But here's the question. The question is, we know that 1,000 horsepower basically is the new 500. It's so easy to make 1,000 horsepower that we go to the wrecking yard. We can do it with lots of different combinations. We can do it with a big block or a small block or an LS, a Coyote, whatever. And then we, put boost to it. And you take 1,000 horsepower turbo with the LS or the other motors. You put a cam and springs in them, and you have the right amount of boost, and you have the right size injector, and the right timing and air fuel, and pretty easy to get that kind of power out of it. Whether or not, it's a whole nother discussion, whether or not you have a transmission that will work with that, or the gearing, or the brakes, or the driving talent, or the chassis setup to get it to hook, and all of that stuff. We're all doing that, and we're not all doing, but it is fairly common. Making that power is fairly easy. The question is that not long ago, before 1,000 became the new 500, 500 was the new 500, and a 500 horsepower motor in a good car is still a pretty performance oriented machine. And so my question is, and the thing is, it's even easier to do than the 1,000 horsepower stuff, and less expensive. So if you look at the graph that I have up there, please take a look at that, and you can see, and take a look at the curve, take a look and see where it's making power. We engaged the nitrous relatively early on this because it's a fairly low RPM. This particular one is a Gen 6 big block Chevy. Right from the wrecking yard, the only thing that I did is we had taken the fuel injection off of it, put a carbureted intake manifold on it, a 650, a distributor, headers on it, and then ran it. And then we added a Zex nitrous kit. I didn't even know jetting to, let me see what we did here. How much power we were making. So we went from, 375 horsepower, let's say, somewhere near there, which is kind of typical. When we put a cam in them, they go up to 425 or so. But it went from there up to 500 and, let's say, 525 or 530 horsepower. And the big thing is over 650 foot-pounds of torque. So 660 or 665 foot-pounds of torque. We engaged it at like 3,500 and saw it activating, up around 4,000 or so. Good solid gain all the way across. Our tune was kind of spot on. We took away 4 degrees. We had the right air fuel. We had the right jetting, basically, and the right fuel pressure in our nitrous setup. So the curve just looks really nice. You could engage this earlier too, given that this is where did we run this thing to? We revved it all the way out to 5,500 RPM. So it kind of tells you, with a stock camshaft, these were not, where was it? I'm going to see where this thing was even making peak power. It made peak power at like 4,500, maybe 4,600. Peak torque was way back at 3,500. So this was a Gen 6, 454 truck motor, the 7.4 liter Vortec motor. Obviously, and it made power even earlier if we would have kept the fuel injection on there a little bit earlier than the dual plane with the stock camshaft. So it's a very low RPM motor. The thing is, it made over 500 horsepower, and in fact, it made 512 horsepower. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Okay, I'm taking a look here. Yeah, so it made 375 and then like 480 foot-pounds when it was NA. And the thing is, since we're making over 500 horsepower and we're making over 650 foot-pounds, this combination obviously in almost anything. So my first question for you, so we'll do a little question and answer deal. First of all, if you had a motor like this junkyard motor, and it was making 550 horsepower, 650 foot-pounds, 520 or 30 horsepower, and it was a simple junkyard motor with a carburetor on it and a nitrous, what would you put it in? What application would you run this in? Would you run it in an S10? Would you put it in a Fox body? Would you put it in a IROC? What car would you guys throw this thing into? What thing would you use to go? Because this thing in any one of those things that an Opel Kadett, I don't care what it is, a Miata, whatever kind of nonsense thing you want to put it in, put a big blower on it, put it in a Nash Metropolitan. What would you put it in? Because with this amount of power, this thing is going to be if you had a car that was sub 3,000 pounds, which isn't very hard to find, this car would be fast. I mean, if you put, gear in a converter or stick or whatever, and that's the thing, this thing with a normal kind of transmission would still live. I mean, if you did this right, I don't think you'd break the transmission. If you stuck a turbo 350 with a shift kit and a converter in this thing, it would last all day. You wouldn't hurt stuff. And I think that, so what do you guys think? Let me know, first of all, what kind of car you'd want to put this in. We'll get a poll going up here also. Okay, would you choose a big block Chevy over the LS, like the big block that I'm showing you here? Those are the dyno results from a Gen 6. Would you choose a big block Chevy over an LS for a simple, cheap nitrous motor like the one that I'm showing? So that will be our poll. But I want to know now, let me know what kind of vehicle you would put this in. Let's see what guys are choosing here. Vega, Junkyard 4L80, muscle car, Ford Ranger, 76 Nova, a Saab, excellent. Definitely other guys. S10s. Put it in a 1927 Stearns Knight. That's way other guys. An Opel Kadett, yeah. 71 C10, always a good choice. Four-door Nova. The More-door Nova. 68 Chevy truck. 98 S10. Doing an HE on a 351 farm truck. I'm going to get the distributor with the built-in coil. Yep, those work good. Can you even put 500 horsepower down? That's the thing. The 1,000 horsepower stuff is just, unless you can get it to hook, which is no easy task. 500 horsepower is a lot of horsepower, and even on this combination, this big block, 650 foot-pounds is going to be hard to put all of that down, especially with the way nitrous engages. So this may be better, especially as early as we're activating the nitrous, as we showed here. As early as you're activating it, this may be a really good application for a progressive controller on the nitrous setup. So that if you could ramp this thing in and get it to work really well, that would kind of be cool, because then you could modulate traction on it. Because if you just hit this thing and it has 650 foot-pounds, that's going to take a lot of tire and suspension to hook up, especially if you've got a steep first gear and some kind of gearing in it other than a 2 series or a 3 series gear in the back. But even with a 308 in something, this much torque and this much power would go really well. The nitrous stuff would work impressively. So what else are you guys putting this in? Vegas, Novas, Impala. An Impala SS would be good. I really like those cars. I tried to talk the guys way back when into doing I wanted to do a 200 mile an hour Impala SS and have Dale Earnhardt drive it. I was trying to pitch this idea when I was at All Chevy magazine, and I just couldn't get any traction with it. I'm like, he'll do it. This is obviously back when Dale was alive. I'm like, he would definitely do it. There's no way he doesn't say yes, and I would do that. We'd make it, we'd put a 3 on it. We'd make it look like that car. And I said, I can easily get this thing to go 200 without any problem. We would do it with boost, obviously. I would choose a big block because you run on pump gas. This was run on pump gas. This combination is easy a pump gas motor. It was a stock motor from the wrecking yard, stock compression. We ran it on 91. We pulled 3 or 4 degrees of timing out of it, and then ran it with 91. And this was probably at like, I'd have to look at the airfield, but I think it was like 12.0, so it was fine. A K5 Blazer, also good. 66 Nova, I like the 66s. Those are cool. Opel GT, yeah. Ford Pinto would also be good, even though I have a few LS powers. The thing that the question about choosing the big block over the LS is this: if you're both of them, like if you get a wrecking yard 5.3, let's say, it's going to make about 350 horsepower. It's going to make a little less power than the big block does, but it's going to make a lot less torque. So it'll make 385 foot-pounds. It's going to be down quite a bit in torque compared to the bigger 7.4 liter. So it'll have less average power production, especially in this range, because the 5.3 will rev a little bit more than the big block will, but not a lot. It doesn't make peak power a whole bunch higher than this. So it'd be interesting to see what they would do in terms of power. You could always just add a little bit more nitrous with the LS. The LS would be lighter, obviously, than the big block, but the big block has a lot more average power production. It kind of would be an interesting comparison, and they would definitely have different feel to the way that they drove and the way that they went down the track. Second gear left the chat the first time I went wide open with a 454 and a turbo 350 in my Blazer. I'm betting it made 300 horsepower or less. I realized how it's possible for Richard to be live 24/7. He's a robot. That would be cool. But then I would be taking over the world, right? I've gone 145 or something was talking about in my Impala. The Impalas with the LT1s in them were actually pretty fast. If I remember, there was a Gremlin in Arizona that went 10 to the Gen 6 on Nitrous a few years ago. 82 Chevette. Yeah, that's very cool. I ultimately want to go 200 on the Salt with our 51 Chevy truck. Currently all-wheel drive 373s LQ4. Chevy truck is not the most aero thing in the world. It takes a lot of power to do that. Ported 799s are ported. 862s for an LS 6 liter. Mario, you probably don't need either one of those, or unless you're answering for somebody else. I would choose the big block. Let's see how our poll is doing. We have would you choose a big block Chevy over LS for a simple, cheap nitrous and NA motor? 52% are saying no. So we've got more no's. We've got more LS people here, obviously, than big blocks. I would choose a big block only for torque because all motor rolling burnouts are impressive. They are, and of the two of those, the burnout potential would definitely favor the big block. Doesn't the big block cost more to build? No, it may cost a little more from the wrecking yard. From my yard anyway, they do tend to charge a premium for the big block, or at least they were. I don't know if that's still going on now that they've raised all the prices on stuff. But in a lot of places, all the motors are just motors, and you just go get it, and that motor is the same as the others. But you're not having to build anything. If you're going to run a carburetor on an LS, you have to get the carburetor and the intake and the ignition controller, the nitrous, just like you would with the big block. In fact, it's probably less expensive to buy an intake manifold and a carburetor and a distributor for the big block, because the big block you could actually get with the distributor. I would buy it if it's available in your wrecking yard listing of the way that you can purchase these motors. Sometimes you have blocks, short blocks, long blocks. So you can buy a long block, buy it that way. But then I would just go grab an HEI hydraulic roller geared distributor and put that in the motor, take off the fuel injection and throw it away because you're going to get rid of it anyway. And just have an HEI, because an HEI, you don't need an MSD for this. An HEI is more than enough distributor for what we're doing here. I've been beating on turbo 350s at various power levels for 20 years, and the only failure has been a front pump. So using LS1 in my 71 Chevy short bed. Nice. 5.3 with a 7875, 6 PSI on E85, the turbo 350. That should be a good combination. And at 6 PSI, the 7875 is really just getting going. Would 454 be a Vortec and a cam swap in it? You don't have to cam swap it. The graph that I'm showing as the thumbnail is without a camshaft. It's just the stock camshaft. It's just the motor, the way that it came from the wrecking yard. The stock rockers, push rods, valve covers, all of that stuff. The only thing it has is an intake and carburetor on it. Had a 91 C4 up to 157 so far. I remember we had my friend of mine had a 84 Corvette back when I had my Mustang, and it was very cool, crossfire, and he did a bunch of stuff to it, and that car would go 150 after we did he put headers on it, took the swirl vanes out, K&N, changed the timing in it, I think, in a tune. And so that car picked up quite a bit, because I think that car was like 144 or 5 mile an hour car stock. His was a Z51 car with the 308 gear in it. And then it would go 150 after he did that stuff to it. Rather have a mild engine in a light car. So the other thing is, we went over the cars that you would put that in. So what do you think if we put this thing in this kind of power output, 500 and low 500s and 650 foot-pounds with a nitrous big block in this thing, what do you think what would this thing run in a Fox body? So let's take a 3,000 pound Fox body with, it's a fairly easy to set up the chassis for a Fox body to get it to hook. I mean, this thing should run 160s or 170, 60 foot times probably, with very minimal, with tire and gear and stuff, and minimal rear suspension stuff. It's pretty easy to get those things to hook up. What would this thing go? What would this power do in a 3,000 pound Fox? Richard, have you ever seen a Powerdyne supercharger on an LS? No, I haven't seen Powerdynes in a long time. I've run them on Fox motors before, and if you had the right bracket, there's no reason it couldn't go on there. The Torque Storms have LS kits, which would be similar, although they're not belt driven. Would a 5.3 instead of a 6.2 help a transmission survive? It probably would. There would be less torque. Would a big block last longer? I don't know that a big block is going to last longer than an LS. Both of those have pretty good longevity, especially at this power level. So you think that this is a box? You think this is easy 10s in a Mustang? Do you think it would go 1090s or something with this kind of power? Google saying 11s. High 9s with enough nitrous, not with enough nitrous, with the power that's shown in the deal. So it's 500 and let's see here. Yeah, 525 horsepower and 660 foot-pounds. I would, if I was running this at the track and I was only running to 5,500 RPM, I would engage this nitrous earlier. I mean, I might even be tempted to hit it like right off, depending on how much traction we had. Would it be feasible to get an LQ4 to 500 horsepower and 87 octane? 500 flywheel horsepower? 3,000-pound Fox with 180 shot of nitrous, Victor Jr. intake, stock bottom end, runs mid 11s. Is that with a stock camshaft in it too? An LS1 and 5.3 are different things. An LS1's a 5.7. To make 550 horsepower twin T3 turbos too small. And what would need to be done as far as tuning? Will the stock ECU work while you need a Holly? You can have the stock ECU tuned. I don't know why you would want. Do you want to have a stock 5.3 with a stock camshaft in it? It would be better if you did a 5.3 with cam and springs, and then put two GT30 76s on it. Would be good for the lower kind of boost level. And you're probably going to be looking at more like 600 to 700 horsepower at fairly low boost. Powerdyne is a centrifugal supercharger, or was a centrifugal supercharger that was belt driven instead of gear to gear. Inside it had a cog belt assembly. 3,000 pound, 500 horsepower, 11.2 at 127. Tens at sea level, or at some of the magic tracks that they have that they have back in New Jersey. I used to give Camposano and Evan a hard time about all of the magic times that they ran at those tracks back there. Eric, it just had rockers on it, but with a stock camshaft. Lower aerodynamic CD is just like free horsepower. Yep. A Mach 1 428 Cobra Jet. You had a Cobra Jet above 145 miles an hour. Poll is 52% saying no and 48% saying yes right now. B303 is longer duration and higher lift than stock. Yes, it's bigger than stock by a pretty good bit. Did Powerdyne have reliability issues? Guys would have the belts go bad on them. They really worked on with Goodyear or Gates or whoever they were working with on the belts to get the belt strength up there, because the Excel and decel thing on a cog belt was difficult. When am I going to do more Gen 2 stuff? I do need to do more Gen 2 LT stuff. Richard, your manifold creation videos have helped me a ton for designing manifold for the Ford Cyclone. Yeah, just find a tube that works, try different lengths, put a plenum on it. It's all simple. For your poll, which big block you're referring to? The big block, AJ, the big block that was in the thumbnail was a Gen 6 454. So a 96 to 2000, I think, is what years they had. Do you have any interest in a Big Bang 305? Not really. If I do a small block, it would be a 350. It would probably be an L31, like a Vortec 350. I'd like a nice 366 truck. 10. You want the small displacement, tallest deck big block that they made. At least do CNC work out of my house, so the manifold will be full billet, except for the Holley high ram plenum. Monza, well, as I've dreamed for the last 10 to 15 years, it's time to make it happen. I have a 61 2A3 steel crank, eagle rods, forged pistons, planet set of 202 heads, comp 6028, LT1 fuel injection intake, and twin GT 2871s. Okay, 600 horsepower. That's more than enough. Are you going to have trouble having those 202, if you're talking about fuelie heads, Will those heads work on the 283? Are you going to have valve to cylinder interference? Richard, have you seen LT's? Yeah, I have watched LT stuff. His Turbo 8.1. Why haven't the new LT engines taken off? They have. They're just not in wrecking yards, so that they're not low buck options. But lots of LT guys are making lots of power. Richard, I have LT stuff, a block and stuff. I don't need a block. What I need are complete motors. I need to get 2 of them. I need the LT 350 and then the LT, the 4.3 liter, so that I can swap this stuff out. Do you think you get 1,500 horsepower with this Chevy 350? I don't think so. I don't think it will go that high. If the poll comes out 50-50, maybe we could do a run-off like a 6.2 versus a 454 or something like that. It just says LS, so you can really pick whatever LS you want, and really it says big block. But the big block that was used in the thumbnail is the 454. And if you were going to the wrecking yard to get a big block to do this kind of thing with, you would pick a 454. For one, it'd be hard for you to find a 366 or 427 or 402 or 396 or anything else but a 454. The odds of you finding those, because they made way more of those than anything else. So you would find a Gen 6. We see those. Gen 5s, we see those. Some Mark IV stuff, although not as common. So we're 53% no. So the no's are creeping in. Richard, is it always better to run a single plane than a dual plane on a 6-liter when turbocharging? No, it depends on what RPM range you're running. Small and tall, like the 400. Yep, like the 400M. Yes, I said 400M, and I'm always going to say that from now until forever. I'd like to see a Big Bang L31. I recently acquired one. David Vizard says 500 horsepower is the limit of the Vortec block. That's not even close. We've done 300 more than that, so we know that that's not the case. And I don't know what he may mean that 500 is the limit for Formula 5000 racing or endurance racing or whatever his definition of it is. But we've done lots more than 500 horsepower. What do you think of the 462 valve? If you take a look at the lots of videos that I've done and the book that I wrote on them, they work good. How would you build an LS for a daily driver? I have an LS as a daily driver, and it's a 2002 Chevy Silverado, and it's a 5.3, and it's all stock. Uncle Tony sent the 318 tube roll to Andy and David, but why wouldn't he do it? Need a junkyard Coyote? That probably would more than likely be a truck engine. Would a single plane be better for 6,200 RPM and below? No, a dual plane would be better in that RPM range. I have a 91 Z28 with a 5.7 out of a 98 K1500. It's got Edelbrock RPM air gap 2 on it with full exhaust. What would a method of choice to get 500 out of the engine? If you want 500 horsepower out of a 350, you would have to have, you could do it a couple of ways. One, you could make it a 383 and then put good heads on it and a cam, and then 500 horsepower is well within the range of that. To make a 500 horsepower 350 takes a lot of camshaft and compression and big heads and intake manifold, and it's not very drivable. With boost, it's very, very easy. Or nitrous, as we've shown here. I'm hoping to make 500 horsepower with a top-end rebuild of my Pontiac 455. Those normally just need a little bit of compression, and it helps a lot. Edelbrock CNC ported. Yeah, that's way more than enough cylinder head. If they flow 310 CFM. Single plane 230, 236. I think you're be right there with that camshaft. You don't seem like you'd be driving stock. Well, the thing is, you should always have one stock vehicle that is reliable, and you should have that. They all shouldn't be disastrous like all the motors that I have. I'm lucky in that I have lots and lots of motors and that I get to do lots of testing. And so I get my like, modification groove on those things that I do on the dyno. So I have 1,000-mile trip round, to go back and forth to the dyno. So I have to have something that I know is going to get me there and get me back. Building a turbo 408 for 1,000 horsepower, you don't need any aftermarket head. The AFR heads are really good and they make good power, but your 317s that you have on there, a 408, you don't even need to have a 408. A 6-liter will easily do that, or a 5.3, or really a 4.8. But a 408 with 317 heads, put springs in it, put a cam in it, put the truck intake manifold on it, run boost on it, and put a turbo that's capable of 1,000 horsepower. That's all very easy. I had a complete LT1 for you, but it went to my 260Z before I sold it. Oh, that's cool. I have a 71 240. Do you play with diesel engines? No, I had a diesel. We did some stuff on the chassis dyno, but not on the engine dyno. If you see a 1500 with a blinking check engine light, 90% chance it's a failed lifter. Mine has all kinds of lights going on the dash. Mine are now, I have the brake light and the ABS lights coming on. I don't know if it's a ground or if it's a ABS sensor or an ECU. How many horsepower will a Gen 4 big block with a 2-bolt main cap? I don't know about the 2-bolt stuff. We've done 600-700 horsepower with 2-bolt stuff a lot. You need a truck with a manual transmission. It probably would get a little bit better mileage, and I wouldn't have blown up my 4L60. Would you do a Subaru motor? I've never run one of those. I've never even looked into what it would take to hook it up on the dyno, because it would need a different bell housing, obviously. I don't know what the ECU is going to look like for that. Why are the Airflow Research $2,000? They're really good heads. Cleveland's rule. That's all right. You get to like what you like. That's the great thing about being here. You can like anything that you like, as long as you don't tell other people that the thing that they like isn't good because only the thing that you like is good. That's not the way the world is. Whipple supercharger on a 502. Very cool. How much horsepower will a stock Gen 2 LT1 bottom end take? I don't know. The Corvette motors were 4-bolt main, so I don't think that the block is a weak link. I think if it's a stock bottom end, the rods and pistons, like all of the other stock bottom end things, probably would be the limit. But if you look at the Grubworm thing, he was using at least a stock block and maybe early on a stock bottom end for quite a while. Now it's a double throwdown kind of thing, and he's since he continues to break the stick record. I think he just did it again recently. I thought I saw him on one of the social media posts, but a lot. I mean, I'm sure that it's over 1,000 horsepower. Can you test the power of no header? Like just run no exhaust on it at all? Brake light is normally the ground. Yeah, I was going to go through and grind off and reattach all the grounds to see if that worked. And then the ABS module we were thinking might be it. I think Oliver was recommending I check that. 430 in a street strip, heads cam intake combo. What's the peak power limit on 93 octane? There isn't one. I don't know that. I think you'd get to the limit of the block before before you get to the limit of 93 octane on an actually aspirated one. if that's what you're talking about. My ABS and brake line has been on. Your brake light, okay, has been on for 10 years. It's a $900 part. Oh yeah, no, I'm not spending $900 to fix it. I would just unplug the light before I do that. Can you build a slant six to live in road racing? I don't know why you would choose that motor for road racing. It's not terribly powerful. It's very heavy and it's very long, so it's not ideal for packaging either. That being said, I applaud the enthusiasm and the desire to do something odd. A Mitsubishi bell housing fits the Kia Sorento 5-speed manual rear-wheel drive. Are you talking about a? What are you talking about that bell housing for? What does that fit? What engine does that fit? Be interesting to test with no exhaust manifold whatsoever. I'd be worried about hurting the exhaust valves if you do that, and it's going to make less power than having pipe on there, because we already know that the head flows less with no pipe on there, and there's going to be no scavenging effect at all. Some of the LT ones did come with 4 bolts. The Corvette blocks were 4-bolt blocks. Andy, I'm the wrong guy to ask about the startup stuff on the Terminator X. I don't know why it would not want to start. 350 Vortec with a turbo. What turbo and cam? The turbo, the turbos that you need is going to be decided on how much power you want. So you pick the turbo, the size of the turbo for the power level that you want, and the camshaft you pick for what you want the motor to do out of boost more than what you want it to do in boost. What RPM range do you want? Do you want a stock converter? Do you want a good idle? Do you want to have the chop? do you only care about running it at 8,000 RPM? Those are the questions you need to answer there. There was a GNX that used engine clamps to hold the heads on the block. I don't know how an engine clamp would hold it more than head studs do. We know we have ECUs that will run a Subaru. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. I don't know what the crank trigger is and the cam trigger is, and a 4-cylinder harness is not a problem for that. I don't have any of those motors and have not looked for any of those motors. Justin, if you're looking for a transmission for a big block, a Turbo 400 or a 4L80. Freiberger the guys at Engine Masters just did a Zoomy test. I think that they did an exhaust test. That's probably coming out in one of their shows. Grubworm went 661 at 216. Do a big bang with a 1UZ. I just would like to run one of those, and also the Nissan as well. Yeah, I need to do a best list, right? Red Wedge. I know people want to individualize the cam specs and talk about what individual things do, but an LSA by itself doesn't tighten it, because the LSA is part of what's going on with everything else, and the same thing with duration. So I hesitate making statements like you're making there, because it tends to confuse people that don't understand what's happening with camshafts. Would you do testing using a stock ECM? Probably not on the engine dyno. It takes too long to flash them, because and the stock ECM isn't going to do anything differently than what we're doing. As long as I can get it to give it 29 degrees of timing, let's say on an LS, and have the air fuel be 12-1 or 12-5 or 12-7 or whatever it needs to be, the stock ECU will be able to do that. It just takes a lot longer to make that happen. There isn't any magic between the air fuel and the timing thing. Both of the ECUs will do that. So it will be able to get the same power. Recal, don't worry about it. It doesn't, it's not the end of the world if you hit the wrong button for the poll. Can you explain the tuning process with nitrous? I can tell you what we do, and it's, I don't know if it's a tuning process, but if we're putting a nitrous kit on a motor, let's say a simple carbureted setup, we already know what the recommended jetting combination is based from the manufacturer. So you run this nitrous jet, you run this fuel jet to make this amount of power gain. So we'll start there, and then we will run, what we do is, if it's a carbureted setup, obviously you're running carbureted fuel pressure to the fuel solenoid. You're running nitrous to the nitrous solenoid. We heat the bottle up in a water bath, basically a heated water bath, because it heats the bottle up evenly. And then we take it out every once in a while, always shake the nitrous to stir it around, so that the boundary layer of the heated bottle, so that it all heats up. And so we also can check the pressure with a pressure gauge running off of the bottle in the line going up to the nitrous solenoid. So we get the bottle up to about 92 or 93 degrees. And then we get the bottle pressure up to, let's say, between 1,000 and 1,100 PSI, something like that. We obviously fill the bottle before we do that, and we do that based on weight. And then on the fuel side, what we do is we have a dedicated fuel flow. Like, we have two lines from the fuel pumps going to the carburetor, to each side, one to each side of the carburetor. Then we have another fuel line that's dedicated for nitrous going to the nitrous solenoid. Well, before we hook that up, we have a flow orifice that Brule has made. We plumb that in. We turn the pump on. The nitrous fuel flow has its own dedicated regulator. So we have fuel regulators going for the carburetor, which are set at about 7 PSI. They're just feeding the carburetor. But the nitrous feed going to the solenoid, that fuel pressure is important, because that fuel pressure, if you adjust that, that will change the flow rate of the fuel going through that jet. So what we do is we turn that pump on and flow it while fuel is being flowed. Because if you just turn the pump on and set it with no fuel flow, it's going to change when you activate the nitrous, because all of a sudden now it's flowing, and the regulator is going to be going, hey, what happened? We weren't flowing when you adjusted me, so now I'm different. So we have a flow orifice that we aim into a gas can. We turn the fuel pump on, adjust the fuel pressure. We normally set those at like between 6 and 6.5 PSI. Normally the jetting supplied by the factory and the nitrous stuff tends to be on the rich side. And so we adjust that, we put all that together, and then we purge the system before we run it. Like, we have the motor idling at 1,000 RPM or whatever. We'll just hit the nitrous a couple of times, and then we'll see the nitrous go, and we'll see the motor rev up a little bit. And then we'll make a run, and then we have an activation button set up usually on the handle. And so we go to wide open throttle, let the thing go, activate it at whatever RPM we want to activate it at, run it all the way up to the top of the RPM, let off, and then let off on the motor, rev it up a little bit to clear everything out. And then before we do that, we turn the nitrous off. And then usually when we do that and go through that procedure, we'll also, on the timing, if we're running on pump gas, we normally take away 4 degrees per 100 horsepower of shot that we're adding. You can do less if we have better fuel in it. Sometimes we take, like on a 75 shot or 100 shot, sometimes we don't take any timing away. Sometimes we'll only take 2 away. Depends on how we feel or how safe we think the motor is. If it's an 8-to-1 motor, we just won't take any timing away. If it's a 12-to-1 motor, we'll probably take timing away. And that's just experience over time. But 4 degrees is for 100 horsepower is a pretty safe amount. And then we'll run it. And then if we do go through all of that and make a pull, usually what happens is we'll hit the nitrous. It'll add the 100 horsepower, 125, 150 horsepower, whatever it is based on the nitrous flow. And then it'll just carry that nice and smooth all the way across. If you don't do that, go through that procedure, you can get wonky curves with the nitrous where it will go up and add a bunch of power, and then the amount of power that's adding will taper away because it's getting richer. That's the sequence. How much horsepower could a stock bottom end LS3 make without exploding? I don't know. We normally stop around 1,000 horsepower with those. Any plans for Ecotech? I don't have those on the list yet. Dean, what do you mean a bite for a big block Chevy? Guys running 2-volt main Clevelands with big power always say 4-bolt 351 Cleveland iron blocks are totally unnecessary. But if I mentioned selling my virgin Cleveland 4-bolt block, they want it bad. Yeah, that's what happens. James, you're trying to make 1,000 horsepower 91 octane? I don't really recommend that. Best heads for an LQ4 with a truck Norris cam to tow. The ones that will make the most torque down low are going to be the 706 or 862 heads. There'll be a big change in power over your 317 heads, but you're going to have to tune it to make it work. Ram truck, you have a 345 horse 350 crate motor, you could put 150 shot on it then. A 350 crate motor is going to be hard to make 500 horsepower with. I'm building a 351 Dart around 13.5 to 1. How much nitrous can I spray with this much compression? The compression isn't going to be the limiting thing. The amount of nitrous that you can spray is going to be dictated by the NA power output. I have a 305 small block Chevy and my 86 K5 Blazer. Heads need replacement. What's a good motor to replace it with? Any sort of junkyard 350 would be a good upgrade for that. Stock 6.0 and a 67 Chevelle want good torque and sound. The truck Norris cam would be good in there, or since it's a hot rod, the hot rod cam would be good also. How much nitrous can a hypertechnic piston handle? That's not really the question. Look what we've done on the Big Bang motors with factory pistons in it. Those are cast pistons. I don't know what I know the hypertechnic piston will not take any sort of detonation, but I don't know what the ultimate power limit is if you have everything right. Most people don't have everything right. 350 to the tire. Yeah, making Admiral, we've made 450 flywheel horsepower with Cobra motors. I don't know about the automatic though. I don't know how much of more of a loss there's going to be in that. If I'm running a 300 horsepower, how much nitrous can I spray on a four cylinder? The VTEC motors are a little bit different than your typical V8 because most of those Honda motors, certainly the K and certainly the B, probably the H if that's what it is, if they have lots and lots of head flow, like if you have more head flow than you're using, that tends to allow you to run more nitrous. So I've seen guys do way more than 50% worth of the NA power output on the four cylinder stuff. Have you tried nitro fuel? Like nitromethane? Is that what you're talking about? Any recommended year? I would look for, do a search on L31s and find out what years they are. I don't know. Does anybody know what year all the different years that the L31 came in? That would be the one that I recommend. That's going to be the most powerful stock kind of 350 that you can buy. It's going to be a Vortec headed 350. It has pretty reasonable compression already. You could put a camshaft in that, and then you could put a carbureted intake manifold on it. Nitromethane. I've never run nitromethane on anything. It's not something that the average guy does. What kind of horsepower you get out of stroking a 5.3? That's pretty easy math. So if you, it depends on what the specific output of the 5.3 is that you're stroking. I have lots of 383 videos up on the channel. You could take a look and see what they made. Anywhere from 500 to 600 horsepower with the right combination of stuff. 96. So are the Vortec headed small blocks the same as the 96 to 99? That's the same as the big block Gen 6 stuff, right? There should be lots of those Vortec 350s in the wrecking yard. Just make sure that it's a 350 and not a 305. So how's our poll doing? 56% saying no. So we got more LS people still here than. Yeah, Dan, don't they, when they're trying to work with nitromethane, don't they normally add that to some alcohol-based fuel rather than gasoline? It's not very, doesn't play very well with gasoline, right? The L30 was offered in vans up through 2001. Let's get the North Star engine. I don't even know if the North Star engine's available anymore. I told Mark the last time I was down, he needed me to stay and disconnected and everything. I just told him I couldn't. I said, look, just take that thing back and throw it away or whatever you're going to do. So I don't know what the condition of the North Star motor is. Jimmy, what kind of RPM are you running with that Peanut Port 454? If you're running 5,000 and less, I don't know that the better heads are going to help you. Street Outlaws with Big Chief running Nitros. Everyone's effect. It's not mine. Burns, let me know what your testing does. Yeah, RC cars use nitromethane, but that doesn't mean that you need to do it in your street motor, though. Richard, if I have my 6.0 tuned on the dyno, you mean on the engine dyno? The engine dyno tune is not going to translate directly to what you're doing on the chassis dyno. A lot of times, guys, that the engine builders, if they build an LS, a lot of times they just want to make sure that the motor works. So a lot of times they'll just put it up on the dyno and run it with a carburetor. It's not leaking. It's, they kind of have an idea on where it should be with some sort of carburetor on there. They put timing in it, they put fuel in it, they break it in, they run it, and it's okay. Because they know that when it goes in a vehicle, that it's got to go in the vehicle and be tuned on the chassis dyno anyway. So why spend a bunch of time and extra money to have it done on the engine dyno and then also on the chassis dyno? Would you port aluminum 185 heads? Do you have what 185 heads do you have? They should already be pretty good. Pro Max. Are the Pro Max heads that you have, are they as cast ones? And what do they flow? What do they flow now versus how much power are you making? Because it might be that you're not using everything that's there already. So I'm going to go ahead and shut our poll off at 56% saying no, that they would not choose the big block, 44% saying yes. $267 votes. That's good. I had to help a cousin pull the motor out of his Fox 3 times before he finally found a cam. So is that hashtag wrong cam? NHRA teams pay $1,800 for a 40-gallon drum of nitromethane. So they're paying $45 a gallon. That's a group discount. Fiero guys hoarded a bunch of the North Stars. You can do crazy power through it through a 4T80 trans, so through a stock one. Why choose a big block when it's just easier to get an LS? Even a core big block will cost you a lot over an LS. At the wrecking yard, they're the same price, so the cost thing is not really a thing. He wanted a driver, but kept going bigger with, yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem with looking at when I show people, hey, here's what a 224 cam does, here's what a 227 cam does, here's what a 231 cam does, and it keeps making a little bit more power on the top. And they're like, oh, yeah, I definitely want that until they realize how much time they spend down at the bottom. Go, oh, yeah, maybe I should have considered all of that. Matthew, new build 6-liter LQ4 stock bottom end, LS3 top end, stage 2 cam, S480. You don't, Matthew, you don't have to worry about forge internals. It will do I'm hoping you put ring gap in it, and please tell me yes, because if you didn't, you're dead to me, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. But it's going to need a ring gap, and you can top out that S480. You can do all that the S480 will do with a stock bottom end. Gears are stuck with front-wheel drive transmissions. Yeah. That's right. LQ4, LY6, Summit Stage 4 cam, LS3 intake. Does 92 miles an hour in the eighth, so somewhere between 550 55 horsepower at the crank. Total engine costs $1,500 Canadian. I think that I ran that Summit Stage 4 cam I didn't do it in a LQ4. It's probably more toward the 500 side of that power level than the 550, but that's a good cam. I think it did around 550 or so on the L92 that we've tried it in on the 6.2. Ram truck, you're the only one that can decide if that is enough power. How does it feel while you're driving it? Do you want more? If the answer is yes, I want more, then it's not enough. You get to decide that, not anybody else here. Robert, what would be a good size turbo for a 416? How much power do you want to make? So Ram, if you want more, there are ways to get more. If you have a crate motor, you can change to a bigger camshaft. You can change to better flow. I don't know what all of the things are that are on that motor, but more camshaft, more compression, more displacement, more head flow, different or better intake manifold. So, Robert, for 1,000 horsepower, that's S475, S480 territory, VS Racing 7875 Gen 2 or 3. All of those turbos would be fine for a 416. Enough power only exists until you feel what more power feels like. That's the problem with boost. God, this feels really 7 pounds, man. This is so much better than my NA motor. 7 pounds would be really good. Like 10 pounds would be really good. And so on and so on. Could I hit 500 horsepower with a 383 and 185 Project X heads? I don't know what Project X heads flow, so I don't have any idea. You have to give me more information on the heads. Is there a downside to running a 4-inch stroke on an LS? I mean, if you're wanting more average power, then it works. VS Racing 7875, a Gen 2 or Gen 3 motor, or Gen 2 or Gen 3 version of that turbo, not the original one. Boost is the answer, and then more boost is always the answer after that. Two more minutes. It's morning. I got stuff I got to get done. Did you guys go up and watch did everybody go watch the video that I put up on the and I don't even know what it was. I'm gonna have to go see. It is the rec port head test. Rec ports with turbos. Rec ports don't work with turbos. You got to run cathedral ports, right? Building a stout street engine, would you use I-beams or H-beams? Well, given the fact that we've made 1,500 horsepower with stock rods on a street engine, I think both of those are more than adequate. Rectangle port, and yeah, not big block rectangle port, although those work good too. But the LS3, LY6 style. You want to step up from a GT3582, then put a GT45 on it. Or like an S366 or something might be. Holly low RAM versus high RAM power difference. The high RAM, having not done that exact test, but having tested lots of stuff like that, the low RAM is going to make less power through most of the curve. And at some point might cross over, although I don't know. I would suspect on a really big motor that the low RAM might be a little better. I just don't know where that's going to happen. It might be at 8,000 or 8,500, or the high RAM works pretty good up to even 75 and 8,000 works pretty good. I don't know how the low RAM is going to be. I think the low RAM may be more for fitment. There should be organized lawnmower racing. I think that there is. They have lawnmower races, but they're riding mowers, and they're not really mowing lawns when they're doing it. Big Oz, you only work on LSs. Who is that? That's not me, obviously, because if that comment is directed at me, it means that you don't. I'm disappointed in you because you don't watch the channel. You haven't seen all of the other 1,000 videos that are not on LS stuff. Has anyone mounted a TVS blower on a high ram yet? Yes, they have. The guy that did the Tom DeMuse, the guy that did the blower kit that I tested on the LS, has a setup to put that blower, the either the Magnusons or the factory Ford blowers, on the Holley high ram, and so that TVS will also go on there. Can an LS head 300 make 1,000 horsepower? If they get it all working right with boost, it probably could. I don't know if the bottom end will do that, but maybe it would. I mean, with enough work, anything will do that. Got a fourth gen F body and want a low RAM. Fitment is really important. That's why Brian Tooley, I'm sure, originally did the kind of design that he did, because he wanted stuff to fit, and that is important. Big Oz, yeah, there are playlists for big blocks, big block NA stuff, big block Chevy turbo blower nitrous stuff, and then there are those two playlists for almost every engine family, for small block Fords, for Clevelands, for small block Chevys, for LSs obviously, and Recport and Cathedral LSs, for Gen 3 Hemis. I've run V6s, 4-cylinder Honda stuff, the Atlas inline 6-cylinder. What else? Pontiacs, a 4-cylinder trophy Pontiac. So lots of weird stuff up there. Senator Richard, no, I don't think I want to get involved in that. Although, I don't even want to get started on that. Do you think budget 1,000 horsepower builds would last as long as a drag race engine? I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know anybody that builds drag race engines that are thinking that this is going to be, I need this thing to last 100,000 miles. What I do know is that however long they last, if a guy blows up a junkyard LS, he just goes and gets another 300 horsepower junkyard LS and he's back working again. If you blow up a dedicated race build that could be 5, 10, 15, 20, $25,000, whatever, however elaborate you're getting, and you hurt that, that's going to hurt. .3.8 liter. Oh yeah, that's the other one, the 3800 V6. Have you tested 1,000 to 1,500 horsepower eBay turbo kits? I haven't tested specific kits, but we have done the Big Bang LS stuff has gone to 1,500 horsepower. Those were with Borg Warner S475 turbos. But I have in the previous Big Bang motors, I ran two of the, on the 4.8 and the 5.3. I run a lot of eBay turbos on stuff, GT45s, a lot of the T76s from CX Racing. Those are ones that we made 12 and 1,300 horsepower with two of those cheap turbos. Remember the old rocket cars? Those are cool. Tom from Lucas Oil has driven a couple of, oh no, those are jet cars though, not rocket cars. I remember the guys trying to run at Bonneville with rocket power cars. All the JATO rockets didn't launch at the same time. So they shot a bunch of them out and then they lit. It's pretty exciting. Ever put a turbo on a 4620 bore motor? How much can be gotten away with before needing to go to a smaller bore? Are you? I'm assuming that you're talking about some kind of big block for that. We've done 4600 stuff. What's the lifespan of a top fuel engine? Not very much. Do you think you can install a rev limiter or a B18A1 stock motor? Why would you need to install a rev limiter on it? It's not making power very high RPM, not on a stock B18A. Is there anything different between turbos for a rear mount? The the oiling system for rear mount stuff, depending on how high they are. So getting the drain back for the oil, sometimes guys have to put pumps on them. And then more often than not, when you're doing rear mounts, they tend to tighten up the hot side, or the tubing size that they use going from the exhaust manifolds to the turbos tends to be smaller so that they can improve response. How much boost or horsepower can you get out of a 4.6 bore big block? I don't know. I'd have to ask Brule that. I've never run super high horsepower big block stuff. I'd have to see what Mike Miller's run a few of his supercharged big blocks there on for some drag race boat motors, but I don't know what the bore size was. If I was running boosted big blocks, I wouldn't be worried about trying to max out the bore. In fact, I purposely wouldn't do that because that's not going to gain you anything. You have no limit in terms of airflow and power potential from the size turbos that you would run on these bigger big block motors. I mean, guys are making 3,000 or 4,000 horsepower or more out of twin turbo like pro mod stuff. So it's going out another 30,000 or 50,000 even the bore size is not really it's not really where you should be looking for power. LS3 416 11.2 Frankenstein heads want to run 6 to 10 pounds of boost. The difference between 6 to 10 pounds could be 4 times 40, could be 100 to 150 horsepower difference. So that's a big change. Have you ever used a rev limiting rotor in the distributor? No. 2-minute warning was 10 minutes ago. It really was. I did close out my thing, right? Have you ever messed with roller can bearings? They have run those on a few motors at WestTech, but it's not something that I would ever do because the kind of motors that I do the channel with are for regular guys and not that stuff. How does somebody tell me how a rev limiting rotor works? How are they limiting RPM with the rotor in the distributor? Valve flow is nature's rev limiter. That's pretty hard on stuff. And you just have the piston help close the valve. John, you don't need forged internals for a street motor. There's a little spring and a ground that pops out at a certain RPM. Is it on a plate underneath the rotor or something? Valve return pistons. That's right. Exactly. Okay, guys, it is officially time to go. I got stuff I got to do. Thank you guys, as always, for showing up and supporting the channel. Please go watch all of the videos. I'm working on another one today. I need to get promotion up for the one that I did last night. I loaded it late last night. I loaded it after the live feed. I think I did. So we'll get another one up today, and I'll see you guys all tonight. Pew, 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 pew. And we're ending.